is going on, No Horsing Around family? Zach Boyd, Stephen Burton. This is your Wednesday evening live stream, as we do every single Wednesday, 9:15 Eastern time. Guys, we're just getting started here. We're going to do a little bit of mock draft. Steve and I just trying to keep it fun, keep it interesting, keep it relevant. Probably talk a little bit about the Colts on the back end as it goes, but I just thought it would be fun, Stephen, to do this exercise. This is kind of my cup of tea. I'm a draft nerd. I've already started doing a little bit of research, not super extensive, but I think I know enough to at least have a good outline, Stephen, when it comes to what we should do, what we're going to do. Looks like we've already got one that we're going to pull up here in a minute for us to go over as far as the mock draft. And we'll probably flip over to Todd McShay's here in just a bit. So, Stephen, it's going to be a good one tonight. Get your GM cap on, right?
I know. I joked. I was looking at this one, the one that we're going to pop up. The first one we'll talk about. I was looking at it, and somebody asked me, because I'm not going to ruin it, but there's a player that comes after the Colts pick, and they're like, "Well, which one would you take?" And I'm like, "Well, I really like this guy, but I also don't really dislike this guy." Now, that's definitely why the Colts aren't going to call me about the GM position. I have no clue what I would do, none whatsoever. And even like what Zach said too, like we'll go through this, and then you guys, when you guys start coming into the chat, like you guys, it's like any other live stream. You got questions about the mock draft, you got questions in general, just let us know. And, what would you do? We'll even do that a little bit. Like, what would you do in that situation? So I'm excited, man. I mean, it's tough. We were talking right before we came on, right? That it's a little bit of tough sledding now. Like, you're peaking way more towards the future because there's just not a lot happening in the present.
Yeah. I mean, there's still 4 football games to play. And I know a lot of people are kind of fingers crossed, holding out hope that we have some sort of a miracle run where we win 4 games and somehow all these different teams and all these different scenarios lose out and all that. I don't think it's going to happen, if I'm being honest. I hate to be the bearer of bad news or the negative person when it comes to that, but I don't see it. I don't see us being able to sustain a strong enough run here in the last 4 games to really do anything. So really all you do is hurt yourself a little bit. You've made so much momentum. You've basically went from 14 to 7 in a 2-week time span. I mean, that's a big deal, when it comes right down to it. And the difference between picking 14 and 7 in this draft is monumental, because we all know this draft is going to be centered around the quarterback position. Now, there might be some people out there that say that we're not going to take a quarterback necessarily. There's no guarantee. I'd say that the possibility is definitely strong, regardless of where we're picking. That being said, we don't know who's going to be our general manager next year. Stephen, I mean, I think that's a whole nother discussion, a sidebar, as far as who would be responsible for picking this position. And if it's Chris Ballard, I probably lean a little bit more to I just don't necessarily trust Chris Ballard in this spot, just based on the last 6 years. Now, he may be demanded by his owner and say, hey, you got to draft a quarterback in this draft. We don't know. I mean, and if it's a new guy, you don't know how they think. How aggressive are they? How conservative are they? Where's their mind at when it comes to this football team when they evaluate it? So interesting.
Well, and we said too, like what you're saying is, me and you've been talking about it too, going, the cool thing with this, and Colts fans, you just need to kind of take a deep breath, because this is actually really exciting. Like, the offseason is really exciting this year, because you're going to have a new head coach. You're going to have a new quarterback, like probably a drafted one, and probably a new GM. But me and you have said, like, it branches in so many different directions. Who's the head coach will probably determine a lot of which quarterback they like. Who the GM is determines who do they even want a quarterback. It's there's so many different directions that we don't know where it's going to go, which is really exciting.
I would agree. I mean, this is going to be an exciting part of the time, as we pop up our first mock right here. Stephen, we'll go through this. I mean, this is pretty, I'd say from what I've gathered, and this is just the way too early. Like, oh my gosh, it's the middle of December and we're already talking about mock draft type of situation. But that's the present. That's where we're at when it comes to the Indianapolis Colts. And I mean, right here we've got Will Levis at number 7. Um, I don't think Will Levis falls to number 7 if I'm being like if you're sitting there at 7 on the actual draft date, I don't think Will Levis is probably going to be there at 7 if I'm being 100% honest. I think you're going to have to in this scenario if it fell just like this, I think you'd have to trade up to get Will Levis. It looks like that by all intensive purpose, by all intensive, you know, just looking at it and reading the tea leaves, it looks like Will Levis is going to be QB2. You got Bryce Young, and hell, I mean, Will Levis, make no mistakes about it. He is going to go to the combine and he is going to just blow it up, man. We've all probably seen a little bit of that video clip of him throwing indoors. I mean, that guy has a freaking cannon on him, and he is going to impress general managers, scouts, just the media. I'd be shocked, and I know you're kind of in SEC country down there, so I'm kind of curious to just your overall general thoughts of Will Levis. I'd be shocked if Will Levis is not the second quarterback taken in this NFL draft, maybe even first.
So, okay, down here in SEC country, I'll tell you this. There's a lot of chatter when it comes to Will Levis, mainly in regards to like how his season went. Now, down here, there's a lot of talk, and the reason I like Will Levis a lot is because I hear this a lot too. Kentucky is Kentucky, right? Like he played for Kentucky this year. He was very similar. I think we've talked about it. That Jordan Love factor, right? He had a great junior year. I encourage everyone who has questions about Will Levis, go watch his tape from his junior year
Yeah,
because he was injured this year. He lost a lot of playmakers, lost his OC, lost his entire O line almost. So this year's a really tough one. With his injuries, it limited what he could do. I'm a big Will Levis guy. Like I've told you that. Like I'm a big Will Levis guy. I can tell you kind of diving in and looking at mocks every once in a while. I mean, I'm gonna be honest, like probably like once every week, right? Like you're looking at them after
yeah,
Sunday to see where you're at and what's falling and things like that. Um, the consensus does seem to be that it's Bryce Young, that he's going to go number 1. I
yeah.
think I'm good with that. The question that when you look at the draft order now is who in front of the Colts would take him? Not necessarily like we can project like someone jumping in front of him, like, but when you start looking, like I have serious questions about like I personally looking at the CBS one that this guy's done feels very realistic because I don't think there's one team that you're curious of will they take a quarterback, right? And that's Detroit. I actually don't think they should. It's weird,
I don't think they will.
but the offense is not the problem in Detroit, right? Like he's had a really go look up Jared Goff's stats this year.
Been
They're
good.
winning and he's had a really good season.
Yeah,
He's not the issue.
I don't think that. Like honestly, if we're not taking trades into factors, this is literally the dream scenario for the Indianapolis Colts because every team in front of them, if this draft order falls this way, Seattle, Chicago, Detroit, Philadelphia, and the Cardinals are not taking a quarterback, most likely.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'll say that with one caveat. Things change. NFL is week to week. We ride this roller coaster, and we all know how good Geno Smith's been out there in Seattle this year. That being said, they're kind of sliding back a little bit. It scares me a little bit sitting there at 2. Obviously, in my opinion, I think Seattle's got enough if they're able to get a deal done with Geno Smith. Now they get the best defensive player, in the draft with Will Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
You could debate Jalen Carter, Will Anderson. Honest to God, I close my eyes and flip a coin. That's how close they are. As far as talent level goes, you're getting a very good NFL player, and if health is involved for the next 10 years, you're gonna one of those two guys you're gonna hit on those guys. I'd be a little I wouldn't be just like blown away if the Seahawks selected a quarterback at 2, and tried to just maybe franchise tag Geno Smith if they can't work out a deal and say, okay, Geno's going to be the guy this year, but we're going to groom him and have him ready. I'll also say this: as it goes along, there's this is what I love about the draft, Stephen. These general managers, these teams, they play so many mind games with each other. They give so much misinformation. I can see a scenario where these teams literally just all out go out there and just talk down Bryce Young and just get people to buy into Will Levis. He's bigger, he's more physical, he's more mobile, he's the NFL prototype. He's going to get Josh Allen comps until you just can't even hardly stand it anymore. He's going to get all of these different, he's going to look great in the combine. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's a guy there, you know, when you're Bryce Young, I don't know that you need to necessarily even throw at the combine because you really don't. If you're sitting at number one, you don't really have anywhere to go from one. Will Levis can go to the combine comfortably, and he's going to just blow people away with his arm. If you don't have anybody rushing him, he's going to blow you away with those physical tools. I can see a scenario where all the misinformation gets thrown out there, and the Texans find a way to fall in love with Will Levis. Like, I wouldn't be blown away. I don't think it's the right choice. I don't think it's the right decision. But you're going to hear people poke holes in Bryce Young with his height and his weight. His build is not, he's not like a Kyler Murray where he has a real, thick, sturdy frame.
Mm-hmm.
Bryce Young's a small guy. But that being said, Bryce Young is my quarterback one. I would absolutely, I'm telling you right now, if for some crazy reason that Will Levis went one and Bryce Young was still on there, I'm all chips in, brother. I mean, I am. I mean, you not to steal a slogan from Jim Irsay, which never really actually came to fruition, but I am absolutely 100% all chips in. I believe in Bryce Young. And the main reason I believe in him is obviously he plays in the SEC. He's had a really good year with not as much talent as a typical Alabama quarterback would have. But the one thing that is so impressive to me is when it gets chaotic in that pocket and it starts to collapse, Bryce Young is so comfortable in that situation. Like the way he moves and the way he finds guys and works the middle of the field. That would be, for me as a Colts fan, that would be the dream come true. But I don't think it's going to ultimately happen. I think you're going to have the debate of Will Levis. You're going to have Stroud. I mean, let's talk about Stroud for a minute. Here's a guy going against Georgia. You want to talk about the ultimate job interview, right? Like you go out and you have yourself a day against Georgia, you're firmly in the discussion for QB1, QB2, QB3. You have a bad day, you play really, really poor. I don't know what happens to CJ, if I'm being honest. I mean, I still think he probably is the way to go to top 10. But if you told me CJ fell out of the top 10 after a really, really bad performance against Georgia, I can get on that train. I can understand where that's going to come from because he is more of the old school quarterback where he just stands back there and throws the football. Now, he can be accurate if he has time. But he's not going to go out there and move the chains with his legs very often.
Well, and that's an interesting thing. So, I'm going to backtrack and then I'm going to come back up to CJ Stroud. One, I think you're already seeing the smoke screens come, right? Like they're already coming. They're already talking about the holes. You're already hearing that they're, quote unquote, that Will Levis is being viewed by a lot of people as the best quarterback in the draft. We've already seen the report come out too that the Panthers owner is completely enamored with him, right? Like we're already seeing those smoke screens start to come out. As far as Bryce Young goes, he's still I think you made a lot of really great points. He doesn't have near the talent that he did that the normal Alabama quarterback. I mean, Mac Jones, right?
Yeah.
I was talking about it with my buddy who's a huge Alabama fan. We started breaking down like Mac Jones, Tua, Jalen Hurts, all of them.
Yeah.
And the amount, like on Mac Jones' year there, he had 2 first-round receivers and a first-round running back.
Yeah.
Okay. Tua had like 3 receivers go. Like you had Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, and then
Yes. Yeah.
Jameson Williams, who's a first round. Like
Just
and
incredible.
Bryce Young doesn't have that. The interesting thing when we pivot to CJ Stroud, and this was a discussion that I was talking about before, right? That somebody asked me is, I like Will Levis a lot. I think he fits, and I love the fact too, like he's tough as nails. Like I like that. But that was a question that got asked to me is looking at this, CJ Stroud's still on the board. How do you choose one or the other, right? Like which one are
Yeah.
you picking? And the funny thing is, we hear a lot about Stroud and his under pressure. You hear a lot about that 10 years ago, he'd be the consensus number one overall pick because
Hmm.
of how he's built, what he does. And we hear a lot about that he doesn't run. And the weird thing is, like, obviously, friend of the show, friend in general, we love Derek Larger. Derek is a massive Ohio State fan, right? And he's shown us clips where CJ Stroud has wheels, like serious wheels. The question is, and I talked to Derek a little bit previously about this, is why doesn't he choose to run? You can come on through. They know you're here. My wife's coming through the background right now. But it's almost like they've either told him not to run or he doesn't want to. It's kind of funny. He's doing the stuff that you tell quarterbacks to do, right?
Yeah.
Always keep your eyes downfield. And he's doing that, but a lot of times he's missing out on like these 15-yard chunks that he
Yeah.
could run for.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good point. I tell you one thing that for me, if we're just gonna kind of keep it here until we kind of move on down the road with quarterbacks, if we're gonna talk about Stroud, Levis, and Young, well, what separates all three of them are simply this: you're getting a different variation from all three. What you get from Young and what you get from Levis, you're not getting out of CJ Stroud, right? Like you're not getting the mobility. You can't count on it. You've not seen it on film. So
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing that makes you believe that all of a sudden he's going to turn out to be this, this modern era NFL quarterback who's going to use his legs. Now, will he ever use his legs? Of course. He's going to extend plays, but the ability to really break teams down with your legs. Obviously, Bryce Young can do it. I think I see a little bit of that Will Levis in there as well.
There's a
And
name we've completely because he's right outside the top 10, I believe. There's a name that is like white hot when it comes to the Colts
oh yeah,
fans.
oh yeah,
We're not even talking about him, and that's Anthony Richardson.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and you're right. I mean, and he's gonna go. He's gonna go so up and down as there's not gonna be a quarterback in this draft that's probably gonna go up and down more as this whole process goes. Like he's gonna be all over the place. There are gonna be teams that absolutely fall in love with him, and there are gonna be teams that say, no freaking way, he's not even ready. Like I've heard a few people on some draft channels just kind of doing a little bit of research. There's been people that says he is a day two pick. Like
Mm-hmm.
he is not a day one pick. And then there have been people saying, if you're gonna swing and you're not gonna get Bryce Young anyways, he's easily QB3 in this draft. So it goes everywhere with him. When you want to talk about Richardson, we all know about the athletic ability, and he has a great arm. The problem is can he process the game the way that you have to process the game in the NFL, and can he be accurate with that arm? There's been so many quarterbacks over the years that have had just absolutely cannons for arms, but they don't have the touch. They don't, Jacob Eason's a great
Yeah.
example. We had Jacob Eason in the building. I mean, this guy's throwing flat routes at 110 miles an hour. You know what I mean? Like he just doesn't have any feel. It doesn't have any touch, not the ability to do anything, with that arm. Now, it's going to be dependent on, A, who your general manager is, B, who your coach is, and the direction that you want to go. If you want to have a guy like Anthony Richardson in your building, you have to do exactly what the Baltimore Ravens did with Lamar Jackson. You have to build a football team around your quarterback. Can't be the same anymore. Corey
Well, that's
Potts
the funny
against us
thing.
this season. Yeah, that was a bad nightmare that didn't last too long. Thanks for that. But yeah, with Richardson,
Well,
you got to be all in. I'm talking double tight end stacks, fullback. I mean, the whole nine, man.
and you can drool over it too. Like you can think like revisionist history. If you don't believe what I'm getting ready to say, feel free at Stephen Burton 86. You can search it in there. I was actually a big proponent of Jalen Hurts coming out of Oklahoma. I really wanted the Colts to try to get him in that second or third round. Obviously, he went higher than what they were going to take him at. And in your mind, like you just picture, like you have a Jonathan Taylor, you have that run offense. What could it look like if you did kind of adapt an offense like that? But that's where we come back to like what me and you said in the beginning. It's so fluid. Who's the coach going to be? What is he even going to want to run? Is
Yeah.
it Jeff Saturday wanting to run kind of a smash mouth offense? Is it Jim Harbaugh coming in and wanting that tough as nails quarterback who can throw the ball with just like a ton of velocity? You don't know, but like you said too, there's been a lot of quarterback, and this is what I say about Anthony Richardson, right? And I've talked to different people about this, and you can blame accuracy on balls dropped. You can watch any game and see there's balls dropped, right? But at the same time, like I look to a game that I watched every snap of, which is Florida versus Florida State, his last game at Florida, right? And if you want to be an elite quarterback, whether your guys are no receivers are dropping 11 straight passes. He went 0 for 11 after the half from the second quarter until midway through the fourth, right? Like, so it's a big issue with his accuracy. He's got a lot of tools, and I think the reason people love him is I looked it up today because I was talking to Zach Hicks, and I was trying to get an understanding because there's a quarterback with very similar characteristics, but he's not talked about at all. It's Jaden Daniels from LSU.
Yeah.
And I was trying to get a better understanding of why Richardson's up there. And it's simply due to a couple different things, and two of which is he's 6'4", 240.
Yeah.
And he's going to run like a 4.4.
He's Cam Newton.
He's Cam Newton.
I mean, that's really what he is.
That's what it is.
I mean, he's Cam Newton. I don't know. In the drawback with a quarterback like that, I want to get to is it, how do you say that? Basil
Foddy, I think. We love Basil. I'm just gonna call him Basil. We love Basil. Basil drops in some heat sometimes.
I want to get to his comment because it's really noteworthy, and I want to do my best to kind of chime in on that when it comes to it. And then we'll get to Colton's next. These quarterbacks' bodies break down, though, over time. You're starting to see that with Lamar a little bit. So that's a little bit of a risk that you run when you go with the quarterback who's really going to use his legs. I'm talking about guys who use their legs 10, 11, 12, 13 times in a game, not just running to get first downs or a special package here and there. You even saw a little bit with Josh Allen this year, he had a little bit of that issue. He wanted to know, why are we not concerned, or probably me more than anything, not concerned with Levis. If you think of that about Eason, Levis is a lesser version, big arms, slow to read. I don't see it quite that way. The way I analyze football, I would say this. First of all, Levis can use his legs. Eason could not. So there's the big discrepancy. We want to talk about floor and ceiling when we're looking at these guys. What can the ceiling be? What is the floor? Well, the floor is this. If I'm a young quarterback and I can use my legs, that accelerates my ability to be successful on the NFL football field a little bit quicker because it buys me time. It buys me the option. Now, very, 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 very good point he brought with the slow to read. It's a little bit concerning with some of his fourth quarter throws. He freezes up a little bit. There's no question about that. That's a concern. That's a thing as a general manager you're going to have to start looking into, and that's why you splice these guys open. That's why you pick the holes up. I think Levis is just a way better version, a way better prospect than Eason, if I'm being honest with you.
I want to point out something with Levis too. And a lot of people will point to Kentucky underachieving this year. And I watch a ton of college football. I love college football. One thing that was pointed out to me too is that if you look at him, he was asked almost to do more than any other quarterback in this draft to carry the team wise. We could talk about Bryce Young not having the same talent. Still has a lot of talent on that team, right? But also, if you look, Levis at one point, until he broke his fingers and messed his rib up and got the turf toe, they were undefeated. Kentucky football, undefeated in the top 10. Then he got hurt, and they lost 2 games in a row without him.
Yeah.
Which for me, looking at that, I'm like, okay, you see it there too. But like
Yeah.
we said, go and watch his junior year. Like watch what he did when he had a little bit more talent around him. I'm a big Levis guy. I really am.
We're
He's probably who I want more than any other quarterbacks.
We're seeing this a lot too, like a lot of these quarterbacks, Justin Herbert for, uh, as far as that goes, had a really good junior year, comes back as a senior, and he doesn't have quite the level of talent. Hell, you saw it with Sam Howell last year. I mean, he had two
Mhm.
pros on his team as a junior, comes back as a senior, he has nothing, and it really hurt his draft stock. If we're being honest, I mean, in this case, it really probably hasn't hurt. Colton, big Gator fan. Richardson definitely has it all. Two biggest struggles are type of throws he needs, 2 to 3 balls, and his mental toughness. Also, only 9 starts. That's a little bit. That gives me a little bit of pause. But he's going to be one of the funnest guys to evaluate when we dive into it and we do these real big mock drafts. Guys, we're going to talk about quarterbacks for a long time, and that's kind of my cup of tea. I'll be a part of that as well. ATV 45 High guys love the podcast. Well, we love you, brother. I hate to say this, but could picture Ballard taking a monster offensive tackle, defensive tackle over a quarterback. I personally think CJ Stroud would be a fit in Indy. So here's what I would say. I said it at the beginning of this. I don't trust Chris Ballard with this decision. I always think Chris Ballard is thinking of the cheap, the frugal. How can I get this? How can I get that? Makes me very nervous. Chris Ballard loves him some Ohio State guys. I'll just say that. He loves him some Ohio State guys. Doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to select him just because of that. That's why I don't want Chris Ballard making this decision, if I'm being 100% honest. CJ, I don't know that he would be a perfect fit. Isn't he a little bit more of the same, Steven? Kind of what we already have, a little bit of that prototypical pocket passer. Younger, no doubt about it. I'm not sure what that develops into. I am just really, really interested in watching that Ohio State Georgia game. Like, because, he was very emotional after that loss to Michigan. He
Mhm.
came to Ohio State. He came to win those football games 2 years in a row. He lost that game. I love to see how he could bounce back from that adversity. He doesn't even necessarily have to win. Just go out there and just ball out and show us what you got, because you probably have the most talented wide receiver core of any team in the Final Four.
Oh yeah.
If we're being honest, I mean, you got pros up and down that roster. So, yeah, should be interesting. I definitely thought about the offensive tackle because there's going to be a couple good ones that are worthy of going in the top 10. But for me, you've got to figure this quarterback situation out, and that's the hard part about being a general manager. You got to be right, right? Like you've taken 6 years, you've decided not to dive in, not to put your feet in the water. At some point, you've got to go out here and get one of these younger guys. And I would say this year is the year. Let's go
Well, and I
through.
was gonna say, so we popped up. If you guys are watching, we've popped up too, because you had a great question in regards to the O tackle or not. Is obviously the big stink is Todd McShay's mock draft, so we switched over to that one on here.
Yeah,
Totally has us taking a tackle, and when you look at the picks above it, it's because unlike the other one, Levis, Stroud, and Young are all gone by the time we pick at 7, and then that's a big question, right? Like that's going to be something that we talk about too is then are you reaching for an Anthony Richardson or are you taking a different player? Like there's a lot, and I know the Colts fans, and I've tried to pose this question numerous times, right? Is what do you who are some of the other quarterbacks that you like? And I'm not saying that I don't want the Colts to go get their guy, but let's say
mhm.
they don't. What
I,
else is like
I will say this: if this would not have happened, and that's a big if Hinden Hooker would not have gotten hurt and torn his ACL, he's got to be in this conversation. And I know he we all know about the age, 25 years old, yada yada yada. I mean, quarterbacks are playing hell till they're 40 years old now. You're still getting a 10 or 12-year quarterback, probably up here, more pro ready than some of the other guys, has the ability to use his legs and extend plays, but that guy is laser accurate, man. I mean, he is.
I'm gonna drop a bomb on you here in a second, Zach.
I'm gonna tell you right now, that guy, in no way, shape, or form, would I've been disappointed with that. Now, here's the bad part: if you take him this year, you're not going to get him to play this year. It's basically a redshirt year. Now you have to have somebody on that squad and to bring them in on a 1-year deal to help Hooker get developed, and as far as that goes. But he is such an interesting prospect to me. Like if you're gonna go out of left field and you're gonna do something different and you're gonna try to say, you know what, we're just we're gonna go all in on this kid and we're gonna wait the year and we're gonna let him, just heal up and develop the right way and learn this system and basically give him a redshirt year. And that essentially says you're getting a quarterback on a rookie deal who's going to be 26 years old the first time he takes a real NFL snap. He'd be the guy if I'm going to do that with. He'd be the guy that I would take the chance on because I think ultimately I think there's something to him. He'd be an interesting prospect as we go down the line.
So the bomb that I was going to give you is let's say Todd McShay's draft comes true, right?
Mm-hmm.
That we don't get that quarterback at 7. We don't move up and we lose out. Here's my thought process. You know I've liked Hinden Hooker. I've texted you during Tennessee games. I watched a lot of Tennessee games this year being in Tennessee, right? They're on TV all the time. I have thought about this and said, why, if you like him, which I do, I like him too. Why wouldn't you do kind of the Lamar Jackson thing, right? In regards to make the play to get back in the tail end of the first,
Mm-hmm.
draft Hinden Hooker there, and then you get the 5 years, and you can sit him because then you get that 5th year that you have built in. Now, I think if you miss out on the person at the 7 pick, I think you do that almost regard. You kind of need to do that regardless. You need that 5th year, but with him, now I'm going to drop this too. He is just now having surgery. So he's not had his surgery yet. I don't know if that's a good news, bad news. I don't really know why he waited because
Well,
he blew his knee out with 2 games left.
There's this new thing that's come out it's very interesting, and I don't know a lot about it. Obviously, I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving out medical advice, but there's this thing now that they're starting to rehab it before the surgery, and it's supposed to accelerate the rehab.
See, if that's the case, book it. I would love Hinden Hooker.
I think that's yeah. I mean,
well, and I'm going to point out one other thing with him really quickly because we'll get into him more, but he's older, yes, right? I get that. He's coming off the knee, and I get that too. But when I look at him too, I think it's not understated. You can't understate the dumpster fire that was UT before he got there. And the dude is a leader. And when I say leader, like you want that, we always hear that leader of men, right? Like we hear all those things about coaches too. The guy was on the sideline. He is Joe Milton, who's the backup. He is his biggest fan. He's been on the sideline. He took a bus from Knoxville to Nashville for the Vandy game to be on the sideline to cheer on Joe Milton. Yeah. I love the kid, man. And I know Basil, because he said he say it with an English accent. So if I'm doing that, I'm doing it wrong. I know it's Basil Fati. He brings up Tanner McKee as another one.
Yeah, we can get into him in a second. I want to get through some of these comments. Tyrell, our guy, Zen, as always, so freaking happy that you guys are in here. Tyrell, Zen, we want to know who you want to draft. Let us know a couple options who we want to talk about as far as the quarterback position goes. Yeah, if we're not picking in the top 10 and we're not picking a quarterback, Hinden Hooker's probably on the radar as far as that goes. I still say no matter
what. We did scout him.
You go out and get your guy. Yeah, I mean, Hinden Hooker, not 1 but 2 very good years. I mean, and this guy doesn't throw a lot of interceptions. I know I've heard a lot of people. Some people say he's Teddy Bridgewater-ish. I don't know if I agree with that at all. I think he's better than that. I think he's got way more upside. But should be interesting. Tyrell wants Levis. Give me some Will Levis. Give me a mobile quarterback.
Give me the
I think
mayo
this
and the
year,
coffee, baby.
I think this year, especially if Matt Ryan retires, we're going to have a lot of money in capital. I
Do you
think
think
this
he
year,
retires? I hate to swerve off topic.
yeah, yeah,
Do you
yeah.
think he retires? He did not talk. He talked like a man today, or was it yesterday, that had one foot out the door.
I don't think he comes back. I think this is it as far as that goes. Um, and that being said, we're going to have a lot of cap space again next year. It's going to free up so much money. And I think this is the year, regardless of who the general manager is, you got to spend money on this line. And I mean, you can't just go out and call it dumpster diving. You got to get really, really good talent because if you can just literally solidify your offensive line, and then you can go and draft the right quarterback, you're instantly going to be a far better team next year with Jonathan Taylor, with the ability to use that run game, especially with a young guy. Um, so important when it comes to that. Basel says he doesn't dislike Hooker, but Bridgewater sounds like a good comp on the surface. I have to look into it some more. I'm not comping him to Bridgewater, just for the record. I think he's better than that. I think he makes bigger throws, extremely accurate. I think he has way better legs. He's a much better athlete. That being said, I mean, you probably, if the board falls the way it's going to fall now, you probably think that you'd walk away with Levis and probably be pretty happy. If we're being 100% honest. Corey says so many questions. If you do draft Hooker, who would be the bridge quarterback if Ryan retires? That is the
Got one
question.
for you.
I mean, that is the question. Don't even say it. Don't even start. Don't even begin.
Wait, who do you think I'm going to say?
Let it out, man.
I was going to say Nick Foles.
Nick Foles.
He's already under contract, right? He's under Is it a 2-year deal, right?
Dude, I hate that.
I don't like it.
I understand it, but I absolutely hate that. Like
I don't like it at all. Would you prefer Jacoby back?
I would at least like to have a quarterback. No, and I do not want Jacoby ever again. Great guy though, by the way.
Amazing
Incredible human being. Yeah, love the dude. I mean, he's awesome. Just don't want him to be the quarterback of the team that I cheer for. And I don't know, man. I mean, could you potentially sell one of these quarterbacks who are basically trying to just like reserve the right to have another job? Could you go out and get a guy like, would it even be plausible to sign a guy like a Baker Mayfield for a 1-year deal, basically saying you're not going to be here but 1 year, but you're auditioning for the chance to get that next big contract? Would it even be a possibility? Don't know. I mean, the truth is, I don't think it's necessarily going to happen that way. I think we're picking between 3 people when it all comes down to it. I think it's going to be Richardson. I think it's going to be Levis. I think it's going to be Stroud. And I would go Levis. I would go Stroud. I would go Richardson in that order right now. That's without really diving into all the tape. That's without before the championship game. With Levis, I feel like there's a lot. If you get him with the right offensive mind, and that's why it's probably, to me, it's so important to bring in a head coach of this football team that is an offensive guy, because that relationship between that quarterback, I mean, you look out at Miami with the relationship that Tua has right now with his head coach. I mean, that's an incredible experience, and that's something that they can really grow on and really learn.
I got one for you. I got a question for you then.
Yeah.
Let's would you feel safe in assuming, and assuming's a horrible thing, if we hire Ken Dorsey, wouldn't you feel pretty decent that you're going to go, he probably wants a Will Levis who's being comped to Josh Allen?
I think almost anybody that you bring in as your head coach is going to want a mobile quarterback. Yeah, I mean, like he's going to, like I said at the beginning of this live stream, he's going to blow people's doors off, man, with his ability. First of all, he's going to be faster than you realize. He's probably going to run somewhere around 4.6 on the 40, maybe even get into that the 4.5s. The dude can throw the ball 75 yards in the air. I mean, he is a thrower of the football. There's no question about that.
I want to address this.
Hit it.
So Basel says, why draft Hooker waiting for next year's guy? Next year's draft may be better. You already know the top guy is significantly better. I want to address that, just that portion. This is not for Basel, right? It is every year we poke holes in the quarterback. Rightfully so. Last year it was not a good quarterback class, right? But every year it's, well, next year's better. Guys, here's a question for everyone who's sitting in the chat, everyone who watches this. Has this year not been miserable? Do
Yeah.
you really want to do this again next year?
Yeah.
Just at the idea that you think we're going to be bad enough to get Caleb Williams, who I love Caleb Williams. In the beginning of November, I said he was going to win the Heisman, right?
Well,
And I loved him at Oklahoma,
not to
but
mention that
you don't even know how good he's going to be.
at that point, you're going to have to basically sell everything that you have and just bust the whole team up.
And
I mean,
losing affects the culture.
yeah,
The 76ers.
you got to get the number one pick to get Caleb Williams.
Right.
It's you're not
You
getting him
lose.
unless you have the number one pick. So you're basically saying we are willing to be terrible next year for the opportunity to draft this guy. And I don't think I'm not on board with that.
And it's nothing against Basel. I've heard it a ton. Why don't we just wait till next year? But we've heard that for 6 years. There's no waiting till next year, right?
Yeah, Tyrell says, "What if we get a new?
It's a great point
coach
too.
Who doesn't like the QB class?" I'll be honest with you.
I'm not hiring that coach.
I don't think we hire a coach if he doesn't like the quarterback.
I'm not hiring that coach.
I'm not saying I disagree with you. I think Tyrell brought up an amazing point when it comes down to it. But I don't think I think we're getting a quarterback. I mean, it's just that simple. I don't know when, but I think we're drafting a quarterback. Chad,
I think it's got to be top 2 rounds.
Going way back in the archives, Chad Miller, what an amazing person. We've gotten to know him over the years. He says, "What's up, guys? Levis struggled against Tennessee, but it's the only game I watched him. Just wasn't impressed with his poise in the big game." Thoughts? That's the knock on him. I think the knock for me more than anything is not just big games, but he hasn't really played extremely well late in fourth quarter games, just over his career. I'm not talking about just this year. He's had some injuries. He had a lot taken away from him this year, Chad. He lost, Wan'Dale Robinson. He had nobody to throw the football to. They've already fired their offensive coordinator because he just wasn't very,
They went and hired his offensive coordinator from last year away from the Rams.
He just wasn't very good. So there's a lot to like about Levis, but there's a lot of questions. And if you don't get him with the right coach and the right mentor, you could very well draft Levis and be disappointed when it's all said and done. I'm not saying he's a slam dunk guarantee, but all the tools are there. You don't have to teach the ability to use his legs. You don't have to teach the ability to throw the football and push it down the field. Mm-hmm. You just got to teach him how to read NFL offenses and really, groom him and gain that confidence as things go on.
Well, and what quarterback doesn't have questions, right? Like what quarterback doesn't have a bad game? We were just talking about, we like Hinden Hooker. Hinden Hooker had a horrific game against South Carolina when he got hurt, right?
Yeah.
Caleb Williams had a horrific game against Utah. He's going to be the number 1 pick next year. Stroud had a horrific game against Michigan. Bryce Young has had bad games. Believe it or not, there's no perfect prospect coming out, and cool. We're not picking at one. Like, that's the exciting thing too. You're not staring down. It'd be great if you were, but you're not staring down a generational talent. Like, it's time for the GM to earn his money and figure out. And I was going to point this one thing out with this too is, who are the 2 leading candidates for the MVP this year?
Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen.
Okay, I can take those. I was going to say Patrick Mahomes too, but Josh Allen's a good one. Massive question marks for both coming out of college.
Yeah,
massive question marks for both.
Yeah, like Mahomes didn't even play in what we would call "quote unquote"
air raid offense.
Pro style, offense, and highly inaccurate Josh Allen. He was, and even in his rookie year, he was highly inaccurate. But I think we all see how that played out, getting him in the right system. And I think there's a lot to be said about guys, grit and their willingness to play and want to win football games and really have that, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to prove everybody in the world wrong. It's now easier said than done to go out and find a Justin Herbert or a Josh Allen or anybody like that. But that being said, a lot to like with Levis. And there are some things to not like when it comes to him, if we're being honest. There's going to be plenty of debate, plenty of holes poked in all of these quarterbacks. You're going to hear it about everybody when it comes down to it. Bryce Young, for me, clearly is my number one. There's just no doubt about it. But that being said, I can't see the Texans not selecting him at number one.
I think it would be one of the strangest things ever if they didn't. So before you read Basil's, I'm going to pop his back. I just feel the need to do this. Bailey Savage has been trying so hard to get us, I believe, to read this, that Matt Ryan is staying with the Colts for the rest of the season and next season. So I felt like we just had to pop it. Like there's probably like six from Bailey. There has probably been like at least, I would say at least 4 of the same comment with this. Okay. So I wanted to pop it up and give you a shout out. He is with us the rest of the season. I think he's with the Colts maybe long enough to get his money next season, but he's not. He just too much sound like a guy who's out the door.
Yeah, I mean, I can't see it, man. I can't see him coming back next year. He just doesn't seem like that type of guy, that just hangs on. Let's be honest. Beyond everything that's happened this year, season hasn't went the way we wanted. We haven't blocked very well for him. He's just been head on a swivel all year long. That being said, his arm has gotten considerably worse as the years went along. He's just lacks that velocity. And he's got to have some velocity, even in those intermediate routes. And I just don't see it. I think Matt Ryan walks away from the game. Maybe he gets a little bit of money from us when it's all said and done to walk away from it, but I think he retires. I think he signs a one-day contract with the Atlanta Falcons. And
I think you don't want to be a backup either, right?
Congratulations, man. You had a great career. This season it has no bearing on what you've actually done. You've done really, really well. Minus the fact that you had the biggest, piss down your leg Super Bowls in NFL history, where the man had a ring, but then he didn't. When it all comes down to it. So yeah, should be interesting, guys. We're gonna do this for about 5, 6, 7 more minutes. Any other quarterbacks that we want to talk about before we hop off here? I don't know, Steven, do you have anybody that we haven't had a chance to go over yet that you think, hey, this is a
name to watch,
noteworthy?
So 2 names, right? Like I there's one that I've heard 2 from some different people, right? Neither one has declared for the draft yet. Bo Nix is one. Me and you have talked about him. I think if he declares, he's going to be a very fast riser. Everyone's looking who's going to be. I think 4 quarterbacks go in round 1. There's a potential for 5. Who's going to be the 5th, right? Who's going to be that tail end? Bo Nix, I think, is going to impress a lot of people. If he comes out, he's going to look really good in the combine. He's going to look great in his workout. You're going to look and see like what he looked like at Oregon. Yeah. They're going to kind of write off some of that Auburn stuff. He's one. And I've tried to like ask more questions because there's a name that floats around Colts Twitterverse a lot, and that's Cameron Ward from Washington State. That's a name I hear a lot. He's not declared. His offensive coordinator has left, so people are thinking he is. I'm trying to get it more nailed down on what it is that people like and where he's actually is he like a second rounder? Because I've never heard his name for first. He's super young, really athletic, very Patrick Mahomes like in the way he plays. Those are 2 names to definitely watch as we get closer to when you have to declare. I mean, obviously, Bo Nix is playing in his bowl game. He's already said that. A lot of the other guys have opted out. Will Levis has opted out of it, obviously. I think Bryce Young probably will. CJ Stroud is playing in his, obviously, because he's playing for a title. But two big names, definitely watch those. I know Bo Nix gives people's nightmares. I understand it, Colton. Yeah. I do. Colton says, I pray to God we don't draft Bo Nix. I think everyone thinks of bad Bo Nix.
Listen,
go watch him in Oregon, man. Dude looked legitimate if he had played that way for a couple years.
Listen, though, there's going to be a quarterback and it happens every year, that's going to shoot up that draft board that we're not even talking about right now. It happens every single year.
Zach Wilson,
I mean, Josh Allen. I mean, nobody knew before that season started he was going to shoot.
Mahomes.
Somebody is going to shoot up that draft board that we're not even discussing right now. Then you're also going to have a quarterback that completely falls off a cliff. That you're just like, oh my gosh, I didn't see this guy falling this far. And that's what makes it
It's
interesting.
Anthony Richardson in one composite.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
either gonna. I mean, that if you do a mock draft simulator, you get an F if you pick him at 7 because no one knows where he's at still. Like nobody has any clue. I don't know. But it's gonna be really interesting to see.
Yeah, yeah, there's no doubt about
Oh
it.
God, Corey, this is your
Corey
guy.
is he's picking us to beat the Vikings. Oh my gosh, and I really, honestly, I can see it happening. Honestly, we've spent 2 weeks working up to get to number 7, and now all of a sudden, you go out and shock the world and beat the Vikings on Saturday. And
I'm an optimistic person, Zach. Like I've had, the Cowboys game was the first time me and you both picked us to lose, probably in the history of this show. Dude, I think the Vikings throttle the Colts on Saturday.
well,
I'm not saying Dallas Cowboy-esque, but I think they win. I think it's not super close. I think them losing last week to Detroit is a bad sign.
I
I
think
know people are going to say they're phony, but dude, they still have Justin Jefferson and they
yeah.
still have Dalvin Cook and Kirk Cousins can get and Adam Thielen. Like that's a lot. That's a lot of
This
talent
week,
on that team.
I mean, it's really hard for me to root for them to lose football games when it comes right down to it, just because I'm a fan and I've always wanted them to win no matter what. And I'm the eternal optimist.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think they're going to win. I mean, I think it's going to be close, though. I really do. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think it's actually going to be close when it comes down to it. I just think a lot like this year has been all year long, get to the fourth quarter and just we're going to find a way to lose and they're going to find a way to win. That's just how the season's been all year long. And
I'll
then after
give Jeff
that,
Saturday credit on one thing as a head coach too, though, is they've played hard. Like, and
yeah,
I know that's like here's your participation trophy kind of talk,
yeah,
but they outside of the fourth quarter against Dallas. Man, every game has the Eagles throttled the Titans. We lost to them by 1.
yeah.
Right? Like they play hard for him. Does that mean he's going to be back? We've talked about coaches. We'll do that a different time. I don't know.
Let's
I
see.
don't know what to think.
Basil, don't mean to derail the topic of the day, but any feedback for me on my post from last week's video? I'm cool with you guys telling me I'm an idiot.
What was the post?
Here's the deal.
I'm trying to remember.
He posts so much that I don't remember specifically, and I don't want to put words in his mouth. Refresh it in a quick version. We'll answer that last question before we hop off.
We're
here.
going to end with you, Basil.
As far as what topic it was, he always does a really good job. He's articulate. He lays it out there. I know he had a really long message on the last one. Just want to make sure I'm talking about the right topic, and I don't want to call a guy an idiot before I don't even know
I
exactly
don't like
what
to do that
I'm
anyway.
commenting on. I mean,
Nah.
Basil is part of the family now. Yeah. It was longer. Sorry. Yeah, I think it. How about this? How about we'll try to circle back on it. We'll give you your love. We'll throw it out as far as that goes. Guys, like we do every single week, we just want to take a quick second and thank each and every one of you for joining this family. 2.1K would have never known, when we started this, Stephen, that we would have built this thing to be this big. Our family has just grown so large, and you guys have stuck with us. That's the cool part. It's not been a great season. It's not went the way that any of us expected. But at the end of the day, got guys like Zen popping in here, always supporting the family. And it's just an incredible feeling. I mean, when we started doing this, Stephen, we always said we wanted to be the voice of the people in this community. Everything needs to be heard. I mean, hell, we've had debates with Tyrell on here in the past where, maybe we didn't agree on certain things. But that's what this is about. We love people like Tyrell because his opinion matters every bit as much as anybody else's opinion in the Colts community. And we don't always have to be 100% lined up on page. We can all agree on one thing. We love the Colts and we're here for each other. So just a super big shout out to you guys for what you've done for us. We've had so many people join the family, get those memberships out there. There's $1.99, $2.99, $4.99. Anything you donate to this channel just kind of helps keep the lights on, keeps us going, keeps our streaming service, up and good, better quality for you guys. But your comments is really what we want. We really want you to be here. We really want you to interact, to be a part of this. We try our very best to say something and interact with everything that you say with us on YouTube. Didn't know we were going to get to this point where it was going to be hard to keep up with all of it and hard to comment on every single one of those things. But I'll say this. Couldn't be more grateful for this family and what we've built. And we look forward to just continuing down the road as we get into the draft season, as the season winds down. Probably going to be talking about general manager, probably going to be talking about head coach, probably going to be talking about who we're going to draft. There's a lot of exciting things coming around the way. So just stick with us, ride with us. We're going to be here every Wednesday night. Pretty cool, man. It's pretty cool. So, just big shout out. Basil, Zen, Colton, Corey Lampkins, Nomadic Brian's been a big fan for a long time. Wyatt Law, Tyrell. I mean, come on, man. I mean, this is
You don't hear Nero De Niro.
Nero De Niro. I mean, we've had so many cool interactions. But Steven, I'll let you kind of finish it off like you always do, and wrap this bad boy up.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy. I mean, like you said, when we started it, I don't think we ever, the goal is always there, but I don't think we ever really fathomed 2.1K. I mean, hell, we joke we hit 1K, and we were like, well, it'd be great to hit 2 by the end of the season, and we y'all got us there much quicker.
Yeah,
And it's just crazy, man. Like, it is crazy. We look forward to doing the live streams. We're always making sure we're here with you guys. And like Zach said, we don't have to line up. We argue. Me and Zach argue. Trust me, there's a lot of times I come up with a topic sometimes, and I'll text to Zach, and Zach's like, that's stupid. And we don't do it. It's like, that's a dumb topic, Steven. So it's like, we don't have to line up, but we're all Colts fans, right? And it is. Bear with, and y'all have, and we love you for that, because we're creeping up to where it's going to get really interesting. We're going to be able to really talk about, once we know, like, who have they interviewed, like, we can really delve into who the coaches are. Then we can really, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, all this stuff is changing. It's an exciting offseason. It's kind of an exciting time. I know there's a lot of depression, like, and a lot of sadness for Colts fans. But it's an exciting time, because I can't remember the last time that, like, all these changes were happening at once. So just hang with it. We're excited. We're excited to be around for you guys, and ending it the same way that we always do. I love you. I know Zach loves you. I'm out.